Hello, everyone, and welcome to our first Transition to College webinar. This is put on by Godwell Education, and our two sister brands, ESM Prep and Applerouth Education, are welcoming you to this fun panel today. So if you have, oh, and you just got a poll. So if you can let us know who you are and what grade your student is in, that would be great. I know most of you are probably here to hear about college students, but maybe it's a couple years out for you. So it'll give us some insight into what you're looking for. All right, so I have a really great panel of amazing colleagues here for you today. I'll start with, my name is Carley Nuzzo. I am the Director of Undergrad Mentorship and Graduate Admissions at ESM Prep. I work with all of our college students throughout college and in preparation for graduate applications. I've also been working with a lot of our rising college freshmen on the transition to college and how to best prepare. We also have Jed Applerouth, who's the founder and founder of Applerouth Education and an educational psychologist. We have Teren Teeples, who is an academic mentor and the manager of all of our mentors and tutors at ESM Prep. Rebecca Hauser, who is on my team as an ESM counselor and is also a parent to 3 college students. So she has lots of great insight for you. And coming from outside of our organizations, we have Julie Silverman, who is an amazing mental health provider at the University of Wisconsin. So we are very excited to have her here today as well. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing so that you can see all of us as we're talking to you now. And today we are going to I'm going to go around our panel and ask them some questions. We do have the Q&A function is up and available. The chat function is disconnected. But if you do have specific questions, you can put them in the Q&A. I can either answer them. I can either ask them of our panel during some of the topics, or we will get to them at the end. And then you also have a chance to reach out to us directly at the end as well. So that being said, we're going to get started. Okay, so up first, let's talk about, let's just talk about the academic expectations and executive function. So your student is leaving the house for the first time. You, in most cases, will not be there to support them and make sure that they're doing all of the things that they need to do. So I'm going to direct these questions first toward Jed and Teren, but any of our amazing panel, please feel free to chime in. What academic challenges surprise students the most in the first semester? What is different about college level classes or college expectations than high school ones?
All right, I'll jump in. Or Teren, wanted to go for the first?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in. I think some of the main things that students are surprised about when they enter into college are the faster pace. A lot of classes, instead of being a year long, are a semester long. And so they're cramming essentially a year's worth of high school material into a semester of a college course on the content. And then the shift in expectations. You've gone from being a student who has a lot of your time managed maybe for you, or you've managed, your teachers are managing your learning experience, to a lot of unstructured time where you're having to set aside your own time to study, to manage your own coursework. And professors are really expecting you to step into that and to learn how to manage your own time and reach those expectations. Kind of my 2 things that I think I outline.
And also,
Jed, did you have anything to add?
Yeah. The number of grades, it's very different. Where you have, it could be the courses, midterm and a final. And suddenly it's a very, these things you can't do them overnight, and you can't do them in a couple days. It's like you have to really parse your time out, as Teren mentioned. And so it's planning for that. It's that, budgeting your time for 3-4 months for a major project, major papers. And also, it really is on you to seek out the teachers. If you need help, to actually go and recruit support yourself. It's not automatically provided. Finding the office hours, finding the academic support center on the college campus. Like kids have to be more self-advocates. And if they're struggling, falling behind, having a problem with, they have to be the ones to speak up, go after class, say, I need some extra notes. I'm not following, having a hard time with, the way, your accent, whatever it is. I've seen a lot of different things over time. And kids have to become bolder in terms of taking care of themselves and understanding what they need and going and getting it, essentially.
How can students stay on top of their workload with so much of that unstructured time, with the stakes in most cases so much higher with less grades?
Ooh, that's a great one. I think one thing in supporting students on the executive function side is getting systems in place to help them be successful. And with a lot of your time being unstructured, the goal in those systems is to structure your time in some way. I've seen some students really jive with paper planning, so a planner of some sort. A lot of students, especially nowadays, are trending more towards online resources, different calendar apps, or even one that has surprised me that a lot of students I've seen use their notes app in their phone to keep some sort of structure on where they need to be going in a pinch, and then maybe transfer that to another system that works for them. And so just trying to put structure to your time in some way, and normally in a written or visual form where you can place events and move them around as needed, because your time being unstructured is going to shift drastically. And you're going to want to be able to go with your roommates or your friends to dinner, and move your study plans around to make sure you're getting that time in, even if you're having to move it around.
Yeah, I was going to ask you if you had any recommendations for tools that any of your students have used. I know the notes that some of them are less traditional, so like the notes and then alarms. A lot of students set alarms. Are there any like more like formal tools that you've
Yeah.
seen students use?
I'm a big fan of Google Calendar, is my personal. I integrate
Me too,
the
for my own
calendar
self.
um, the calendar itself, and then there's Google Tasks, Google Keep, a lot of things on the Google realm that you can kind of take notes. You can keep your tasks organized. You can put your tasks themselves on your calendar so you know when to get them done. A lot of times you can integrate your Google Calendar or whatever calendar app you enjoy using with your college's online workspace that they use. So for instance, when I was a student, we were using Canvas a lot of the time, and there was a link that I could copy into my Google Calendar that would populate all of my classes or events that
Awesome.
appeared on my Canvas calendar.
I love that. It's so awesome. Um,
I'll just
any
one
other,
thing.
oh, go ahead. Yeah,
Yeah.
please.
I also think, thinking about your energy, not just your hours, in essence, like where do you naturally feel most focused, within your day? When do you normally like to take breaks? What's sort of the natural point at which maybe you feel like you get more foggy when you're studying or writing papers? Like actually using that to your advantage when you're breaking out and finding your rhythm with studying or working on things can be a nice advantage when you're building in that structured time in your calendar versus thinking you have to study for 5, 6 hours at a time. For some people, that works. And for some brains, that's actually not ideal or optimal or natural. So, figuring out your own rhythm with that, which may take time, but thinking about that now is a good thing to, yeah, focus on before you come.
And
I
adding
love
on to
that.
that,
Oh, yeah, go
yeah,
ahead.
like, thinking about like those rhythms when you're maybe to study, when to write. Also, like the location really matters. When kids are like kids in Michigan, like they're on campus, they take the bus, then they're off campus, and thinking through, okay, so here I have a class here, then I have a 3 hour window, and that's near this library that I can actually find a carousel work focus. Or then, really it's thinking about both the schedule, the timing, and also the physical locations. And as Julie said, some people they can focus in their rooms. Some folks they're going to focus well in one library where they get most of their work done for 4 years. Other folks, it's going to vary based on I have 2 hours here. I'm going to go upstairs, third floor of this library, and find a place to work. And so, really optimizing yourself, your space, and the campus.
Yeah, I think one more thing that I would add to that, just from personal experience and with my students too, is finding out. So Julia was talking about like what timing of when you're in the best like mental space, have the best energy for writing or studying or whatever. So I'm much more of a morning person with my ability to focus on like more like writing and homework type of things, and then easier, maybe busy work type of tasks I can do later at night. Or that's when, you know, as a student, if you have other obligations or responsibilities, maybe don't schedule those during the time when your brain is freshest or when you're most able to do those academic tasks, and instead like work, you know, in the morning if you're not a morning person, or in the evening, you know. So really figuring out what that is, is really beneficial. Speaking of other activities that you might have, a lot of students head into freshman year with not just approaching academics and class changes, but also social life and other activities. What are the best strategies for balancing those and heading into freshman year with potentially competing or different types of obligations and activities on the horizon? So maybe rushing,
Yeah, I can jump into
sorority.
this.
Yeah,
I
go
can
ahead.
address a little bit. I think just as a family, sometimes each of the schools has different approaches if your child decides to enter into the Greek system. And so some actually the rush takes place before school even starts. Others, it might be in the winter months. And so having time to sit down as a family, deciding if that's something your child actually wants to do, taking a look at the cost of it, and being able to sort of set them up so that they're looking at their course selection and taking into account some of the other things they might want to get involved in on
Huge.
campus is a really
Yeah.
good exercise to do as a family or as a family with your counselor. I think it's important for everybody to be on the same page. I think things happen very fast the minute they step on that campus, and having a conversation beforehand when things are quiet and everyone feels very calm and excited about what's ahead, it's not as emotional. It's perfect.
I love that. I think so. Rebecca and I have talked about this a couple of times, that there are certain things, and we'll get to kind of like the planning and everything later, but there's certain things that it may be beneficial to start your freshman year. And then there's other things that maybe can wait, or wait until spring semester. And so that should all go into the overall plan and the best use of your time for success. So if you are planning to rush, you know, first semester of a freshman year, and there's also football and all of the things, like maybe we pull back a little bit on, maybe we don't take calc if math is your hardest class that first semester or something like that. And if maybe you don't have to join, you know, XYZ until later if you need to get certain classes in at certain times. So mapping that out, deciding how you're actually going to balance everything. A lot of my kids really feel better once they have a plan.
Yeah, and I think it's important that kids focus on like less academics on the first semester. I tell my students that going into that first year, 4 classes, don't do 5, don't do 6. I've seen some ambitious kids. You're used to 8 classes and 5 APs. High school is not college. And that first semester is really when many friendships are formed. And you start, you know, knowing your people. And those first 3 weeks are glorious, you know, and you don't have that many big assignments due yet. And it's fun and it's free and unfettered. There aren't any parents. It's like, this is the time to be social, to learn the limits, to learn, you know, sleeping and your schedule. And so I think the less academic load you have on your plate, you know, the happier you're going to be the first semester. And also that freedom to join a club, you know, an athletic club, an activity, an arts thing, you know, whether it's, you know, you're rushing or being part of going to all the houses and sampling the Greek system. It's like you really want space. So my thing is always, more space is always better. And you can ramp up if you need to, second semester or sophomore year. But the first semester, keep it light, keep it open, and you're going to be happier generally.
Totally. And just because you started school early all throughout high school does not mean you should sign up for 8 a.m. classes your first semester.
I was just
Oh,
add on. I signed up for a 7:30 a.m. my first semester, and
Dude, harsh.
yeah, I made that mistake, and I would not recommend it for anyone. I would add on of don't take on too much at once as well. I think a lot of colleges and universities do a great job of exposing you to all of your resources and all of the clubs and different activities that you can be a part of. And so just as you're joining them, being social, not only taking maybe a lesser academic load, but not committing to too many things too early on, and kind of following your passions and what sparks your interest first and foremost. And then I would just touch on a lot of that's going to overlap as far as your academics, your social, and different activities you're doing. A lot of your friends are going to come from your program, your activities that you're choosing. And so being able to structure in time like group study sessions, if that's something that does work for you and your academic needs, being able to structure time with friends when you're working.
Yeah, building those bonds and finding your people are really important, and will play a really big role in your overall. We talk a lot about like your fit and how much your fit will play into your success in college, and a lot of that is shaped by that first semester. So I think that that's really great. Um, and then, okay, so then we're going to move on to the next block, unless any of our wonderful panel has anything more to say about balancing and scheduling. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about mental health and emotional well-being with the transition to college. So I will first pivot to Julie. What emotional challenges are most common in the first semester, and how can students navigate those?
yeah, great question. You know, I think the first semester brings up a lot of emotion. Some of that is expected, some of that will be surprising. And I think many students come in feeling really excited. There's kind of like this building pressure, maybe even expectation. But I think what's important to be really real about is that underneath that excitement, there's often grief, loneliness, even identity confusion. It's a big adjustment. And if you're used to also even having like a social network or a certain community that you've had for maybe years, maybe all of your life, not having that and then leaving behind that sort of high school experience, your family routines, your friends, can really make everything feel new. But I think it's not about getting it right quickly. And so, building off kind of the last question, it's really important to think about your first semester, but also your first year as just being a beginner. And being a beginner means kind of making intentional mistakes because that's how you learn, it's how you find your groove. So, when things don't go right or things are, maybe challenging in that adjustment, everyone is going through that. It may just look different on the surface, but that's how you one grow as a human. It's how you build resilience. um, and I think what helps most in that experience more emotionally is creating sort of small rituals or points of connection that feel maybe already natural for you, whether that's like a weekly walk, joining a group in an interest that you already have some natural affinity for, um, or simply reaching out to a therapist on campus, so that you can anchor yourself, you know, with just talking to someone about your feelings and how you're experiencing your freshman year. It's really important.
Would students, how should students find these campus resources or therapy on campus?
Yeah, I mean, it's different for every school, but I think every single university on campus, I could be wrong, or sorry, every single university in the country has some sort of university health services department. And usually within that, there are mental health resources, hopefully. And you can check out, that part of your school's website online before you go. Sometimes you can schedule like consultations or access appointments before you're even at school. Again, it's different for every single college, but always worth checking out. And yeah, and getting support where you can in that way.
So thank you.
Carly,
And
this could
oh,
actually be a
yes.
moment And Julie, maybe you want to reference if you have a student that is currently working with a therapist in your state, often they can continue that work, but meet with them. If you're going to school in that same state that the therapist is licensed in, they can continue their work with them. And maybe you set those meetings up in advance of them going onto campus. If they're going to a new state, I'll let Julie carry that ball. But if
The
they're going
world
to a
of-
new state, yes, then
Yeah.
then you would want to find someone on campus, right? Like the
Correct. Yeah. So if if you're going someplace out of state or your insurance doesn't have I know some insurance plans allow for that sort of flexibility. But if you don't, that's where finding resources on your campus can be really helpful. Um, if you're someone that just wants to speak with your therapist when you're back home for breaks, you can do that. If you're in the state that you already have insurance in, that maybe it's where you're from, you can continue working with your therapist, most likely. I don't see why that wouldn't be the case. But most schools have therapists within their mental health department, especially Big Ten schools or big schools across the country, even pretty well-known liberal arts schools. They all have mental health departments, and that also includes psychiatry. So the medication piece, if you're on medication, thinking about a plan for how you want to maybe manage refills. Some students I work with have their parents like send them when they're refilled, or when they go home for breaks, they'll pick up their medication. If you want to transfer your medication to your university's psych department or primary care, that's also something that can be offered. ADHD medication in particular is a really tricky one. If you use or if you have any medication with your psychiatrist or primary care doctor, I usually recommend students sticking with that because most college campuses do not provide that medication because of the shortage and a lot of issues with the medication. So just
That
name
was huge. You brought that up in a conversation that we had prior to the panel, and that was something that I hadn't thought through. So I think that there's a lot of things that a lot of resources and a lot of managing of medications and finances and meals and routines that students, we've kind of touched on that before, are not completely used to. So is there any way, and this kind of goes out to the whole panel, is there any way that you suggest students prepare for all of those new responsibilities and things that they need to be aware of?
I think when we're talking about, if you're talking about medications or as a parent, you can easily help when you're on campus during move-in, or even in advance, you can help them find the nearest Walgreens or where you want. You can do some of that administrative legwork for them, but then it's going to be their responsibility to go pick it up and continue. But sometimes I find if you take the administrative work off their plate in the very beginning, that can be very helpful, but you are still empowering them to manage themselves and getting there and picking it up. That's kind of how I would differentiate it in those beginning stages when they are trying so much that is new.
Jed, you unmuted yourself. Did you have something to add?
Yeah.
Oh. This
Oh,
is
go
in
ahead.
terms of like the students learning in terms of how to navigate and operate themselves within the context of the university with all of the. I mean, so much of it, when you're learning that first year, you mentioned the orientation, the kids paying attention. I have some of my friends that bring their daughters and sons back and forth to orientation the past few weeks. Just learning the ropes, using the chat bots that they all have now to answer the basic Q&A stuff. Just where do I find this? How do I pay for this? Registration, financial aid office. Looking at it. The digital tools are getting better and better and better for kids trying to basically, how do I navigate this next few weeks? How do I find the things, the banks, so orientation then at home using the tools they have. And then I think most kids are going to figure out most of it pretty quickly.
I'll also
Just Google everything.
Yeah.
I'll also
Go
add,
ahead, Rebecca. Oh,
maybe
sorry,
this is-
Julie.
oh, you're good. Maybe this has been discussed in, I don't know, other spaces or it's common knowledge, but I work with a lot of freshmen that have I don't know, pick this up from other places where they will walk the campus before classes start and walk to where all of their classes are going to be. I did not know about that when I entered college. I probably would have benefited from it. So if that's something that you think would be really helpful and calming to your nervous system and how you feel going into that first week of classes, by all means do it. Make it fun. Grab a drink of, coffee. And maybe if you have some friends, that you meet during Welcome Week, do it together. But that can be really helpful when you're
Great
transitioning.
idea.
Yeah. I actually remember doing that
I know.
without anyone telling me. I was just nervous about not finding my classroom on the first day. So I did the walk, made sure I could make it from one spot to another in enough time. So I think that that'll also help you planning out like when and where maybe the chunks of study time could go in between there too, to really like have an understanding of how long it takes you to get from place to place. So that was great. Um, so we did kind of touch on parent involvement, and Rebecca talked about like taking some of the initial work load off the beginning and then empowering them and letting them go. But parent
Yeah.
child, young adult relationships get really change at this point. Um, how how should or can healthy parent-student communication evolve during college?
I think what I really loved, and please the rest of the panel can, but I love
Mhm.
when it was talking about that beginner mindset and just
Yeah.
honoring that, because what is really beautiful is when they recognize that they're a beginner and they start to open up and be vulnerable to, maybe it's their roommate or it's someone down the hall. And it creates this sort of young adult bond that is so different than that between the adult and the child. And they can be incredible bonds that will last their entire life. And I'm always impressed with the level of kind of care and thoughtfulness and ideas that my children's friends have given them over the years. And, you know, it's not just the beginning of college. They're also going to have to navigate that transition out of college and looking for jobs. And so, and what do I want to do with my life? And so building those bonds early on, that can be the same support team that they go back to when they're trying to take the next transition in life. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is that yes, transitions can be scary, but they can also be so beautiful and so positive if you let them manage it themselves and build their correct community around them. And what's really key is the community that they're building around them. So that's where you want to sort of let them decide who they're going to be bringing in. Does that?
Julie, do you have
Yeah,
anything to
Julie, you want to
add or
build on
any
that?
advice about how parents navigate this
Yeah.
transition?
Yeah, I mean, two main things come to mind. I think just in terms of communication, um, having some sort of check-in before your children head off to college around like what potential degree of communication may feel good.
Mhm.
I have a lot of students that love like kind of scheduled, intentional communication with their family. One, it gives them the sort of autonomy to choose in some ways. I know there are some kids that like check in every day, which is totally fine. But if you feel like you're a student, or sorry, yeah, a student that would like that, having some sort of conversation about that can be really helpful. And I think for parents, asking open-ended questions, which could look like what's been feeling good lately, what's been stretching you, what's been challenging you, but you're maybe excited about. I think that offers more curiosity rather than concern and also celebrates growth. And also, instead of sort of tracking details, it helps focus on staying connected emotionally when there is that distance, usually.
Mhm.
I think thinking back to being on the student end, and at this point a little while ago, but being on the, I really appreciated some of this space at the beginning. But always me and my mom, for instance, had like if I didn't call her on Sunday, she'd text me Monday morning and ask how my week was. And so it wasn't necessarily an expectation that I needed to be reaching out consistently, but it was just an open-ended, like, how are you doing in general, without her overstepping or reaching out more often. So I appreciated that. And then just my parents being a sounding board of, I would have them ask, I'd be like describing a situation that I'm going through and all of that. And instead of jumping in and wanting to fix it for me, they'd ask if I wanted support, or how my like roommates or support system was helping me in that regard, before jumping in and taking that burden on themselves. So those are just some things that I'm thinking to appreciating, but I know that every parent-student dynamic might look a little bit different.
I love that, Teren. This is related in some way, but we do have like a group text, and all it is sending a funny joke, an image someone thought was funny. It is nothing related to anything that could be like too deep, too emotional. But it's a way for the family to stay connected in a very lighthearted way, and just reminds everybody in the family that everyone is there for them. We are all connected, but it does it in a manner that's very light. And so we've appreciated that over the year. And that could be everything from like a beautiful sunset, it could be first snow, it could just be like a sloppy dorm room, just things that kind of caught your eye and just visually help everybody understand like where you are.
I have to tell you guys, so it's been 12 years, and I started dating my husband when we were like fresh out of college, and my now sibling in-laws were still in college, and we had one of those family group chats. And over the years, it's evolved. So it started out being like uh them, and then Garrett and I got married first, so it became Nuzzo 5. And then all of their partners started adding on, and so the name has changed, and we still use it every day. So it's a way to like continue to stay in touch with keep your family. We all kind of like, without any like intrusion or burdens, or like Rebecca was saying, like expectations of contact. We're all in kind of like this amorphous conversation more often than we would be if it was like a direct outreach. You know? So that's fun. It's really fun. So start yours now. That's so fun. Okay, awesome. I love that. Anything else on parent student dynamics, or relationships that anyone
I
wants to
think
add?
this is more just a practical level. Over the years, what we found is that every school is different, but Parents Weekend as a freshman can feel really great to have your parents come. As they start to get older, what you might find, and this really depends on the school, but Parents Weekend can also be the most expensive time to get a hotel room, the most confusing time, really hard to like really have a connection. So I know some families make the choice to skip family weekends, sophomore, junior, like senior year, and they just pick another weekend to go visit and really have that time with their child. And I just wanted to put that out there, that it's okay to do that. Every family operates differently. Yeah.
Jed, did you have something to add
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah, my thing is just, when you make that bridge, they're in college. That's the time in my book to tear off the Band-Aid, and really like they're now adults, by most, intents and purposes. And so I've seen it where like, college juniors, their mom is still involved, like knowing when drop ad is for classes, and like that is way too late, way too late. And like learning how to transfer the skills, because again, they're about to go into the world of work and autonomy and independence. And this is like this perfect bridge where the parents withdraw and they expect attention and the kids stand on their own feet. And if they're gonna make mistakes, make a mistake with drop ad freshman year versus senior year when you're about to graduate and need a class. I'd rather the parents make space now early and have the kids handle it. And if the kids need support and go to the parents, that's very different than the parents intruding, hovering, snow plowing, all the metaphors we use. But really, I love this is the perfect chance to make a big distance. Even if there was a lot of swooping and saving in high school, this is so different. And it's the tone you set in that first couple months is very, very meaningful. The first few weeks, even in terms of how much involvement other parents can have. So I think it's for the parents just to be brave and courageous and withdraw some as they step forward. And really those Sunday, phone calls, fabulous, whatever it is. But in terms of the executing, the doing, administrating, that's got to be on the kids, because this really is their training to be, this is the world of work and adulthood and independence. So making that space happen, I think, is critical.
And just to build
Yeah.
on
Oh,
Jed's saying, well, I just wanted to build on it for a minute, because what we all have to do as parents is take a step back and recognize that the institution has put so much thought and so much care to welcoming that 17 or 18-year-old person onto their campus. And they have thought through that experience very carefully. And that is what they have devoted their life to studying. This is why they work there. So in some ways, you have to trust the institution that you're delivering your child to. It is set up to help them. They don't need their parent there, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah.
yeah. Julie was
Just an
just
example,
telling us
but-
before the panel that her and her team were getting ready for all the
Mhm.
freshmen. So they're in good hands, especially if your kids are off to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, but all schools, like, that's part of the service and the work. It's like we want students to know the resources that are available so that they don't feel like they're swimming alone in the sea. So, I mean, one thing or piece of advice I've given to students before and also parents is like, at least it came through like maybe in middle school and high school for myself and many people, like before asking a teacher, ask a peer, ask another peer, and then maybe ask another peer. I think the same sort of concept can loosely apply in college, like practicing that sort of strength, that muscle, before maybe reaching out to a parent if you're so confused about some sort of, resource on campus. There are so many people that are working at universities and colleges that do have answers. So reaching out to them if you can.
And if your kids are calling too much as a parent, like I've seen a freshman, they were so tied to her father, like she wasn't making new friends.
Mm.
And she was relying so heavily back on that parental network back in Atlanta. It's like,
Mm.
you gotta, again, I know it's love, but out of love, you gotta push them in, you gotta reach out and get away from the network back in Atlanta. And now you're in Ann Arbor, like get out there and play, experiment, take risks. And even like the safety and comfort of the home network. At some point, you're in college, you gotta be in college.
Yeah, and there's also there are strict rules on what parents can do on behalf of their students. So when I was a college professor, I actually had a couple of parents like email me about their students or questions for their students or trying to get students grades, etc. Like call they cannot speak to you as parents. So like FERPA restrictions, your student has to really, and it's such a skill, like your student has to be able to advocate for themselves and reach out, especially to professors, but hopefully to all of the resources at college. Okay, awesome. So we were talking a lot about independence and life skills, parental involvement. Is there any time when parents should intervene and coach from the sidelines, or should that be delegated? Julie?
I can go. I mean, clearly, if your student is in danger or is clearly unable to function, absolutely step in. If also the college that your child is going to has a like support line, like a 24/7 crisis line, usually all campuses do as a way to mitigate self-harm, and yeah, crises like that. Parents can call those. And if a child is in immediate risk or danger, the the right steps can be put in place. So there isn't like a lack of space there for parents to
Support there. Yeah.
so just want to name that. But I think in most situations, what students need most is your confidence in them and reflecting that back, kind of coaching from the sidelines, offer resources, reflect back their strengths, and, believe in their capacity. so they can be more powerful than any, advice you can ultimately give. And I think also just naming the vulnerability that, like, yeah, freshman year is an adjustment. Whether you are like the most sociable kid, and is somehow able to get to every class, do everything, like, it's still an adjustment for every single person. And I think normalizing that before you go in can make that feeling, one, feel just less intense. It's sort of par for
Yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah, that's perfect. And we talked about course registration, as far as like how many courses and how to balance that first year. Um, do any of you have any other advice for navigating, especially that first course registration and planning period? And if not, I will step in here. Okay. I will say some universities, it definitely varies pretty drastically by schools how much support you get prior to enrolling and registering for classes the first semester. So if your student, I would make sure your student is, this is again, executive functioning skills that they should have. But while they're in your home right now, before they head off, make sure that they have read all of their emails, and that they know when course registration is. So whether that happens before or during orientation. And then a piece of advice for those students would be if it's before orientation, to look at what the general ed requirements are, and starting with those tend to be starting with general eds that they are strong in that first semester, in case they end up wanting to change majors or anything like that. It's better to start out with those general classes. Those also tend to be the ones that they don't need prereqs for. But checking in about all of the kind of like all of the orientation pieces. So what APs have transferred over, make sure that they get in contact with that advisor about what transfer credits they have, or if they do need to take placement tests. So all of those different things about what goes into it, if there are required classes for this first semester. So all of those things are really important to make sure that they're on track academically. And let's go through, and each of us can talk about one piece, the biggest piece of advice you'd give to students or parents starting this journey. So Jed, you can go first.
Biggest single piece of advice for parents or for students?
Either.
Either audience.
I'm assuming we have mostly parents in
mostly
here,
parents, I think.
but
Right. I believe that too.
I could be wrong. I'm sorry, students. Yeah, we're happy you're here too.
Right. The great adventure, the freedom of college. I mean, so much of this to me, I look at it as the bridge to adulthood more than anything else, more than the academics you learn, which most people aren't using their major in a few years. It's like, it really is this, how do I adult? How do I sign contracts for apartments and choose roommates and friends and manage finances? To me, that really is the essence of the experience in most regards. So I think for the thing I tell parents and students both is, like, again, don't overload it. Don't, like, make space, make it as spacious as possible. It'll fill in pretty quickly. So intentionally try to leave room, for health, mental health, well-being, all the things. And for parents, it really is allowing and creating that space as they're making the big moves toward individuation, towards independence, autonomy, and honoring that this is the right time for that to happen. And yeah, and you love your kids and give them support, but also creating the little space for that growth to emerge.
I love that. Thank you.
From
Go
the
ahead.
parent perspective, I think it's really important to model the behavior that you're asking of them. So I recommend, I mean, if it's starting a new type of work, if it's taking pottery, if it's going to travel to a new place, but I think it's important for them to see that they have left the home and now maybe it's a new genre of book that you're reading, but you too should take that time and that space that has been granted to you with their departure to try something new and to fill up your bucket as well. And that will also give you something new to talk about with them. And also it's great for them to see you try something and then drop it, just like they're going to be doing in college. So I think it's just important to remember that they're still watching you and you're still modeling behaviors that you want them to be taking part of as they start something new. Yeah. So don't long the path. That's what I'm trying to say. Like, look forward with them. Yeah. There's lots good ahead.
Yeah, I think
I'm just gonna sneak in really quick and let you all
Okay.
know that there is going to be for our attendees, there's going to be a poll that's going to be coming out to you right now where you can share your information and anything that you potentially want answered, or if you would like us to reach out to you. But go ahead, Teren.
yeah, I just wanted on both ends, just embracing the healthy levels of discomfort that are coming your way. I think that again, this is a bridge into adulthood, and it is uncomfortable on both ends for parents and for students. And the healthy levels of discomfort are where we're growing, both on both ends. Your student is growing so much; it's such formative years, and then you as a parent are going through like your child becoming an adult, and so that healthy discomfort is growth on both ends, and remembering that there is kind of a light at the end of the tunnel.
Thanks, Teren. Julie, one last word from you.
I feel like I'm just reiterating at this point, but
Yeah.
I think the same advice applies to both students and parents, which is let yourself be new here, in that dynamic. It's okay to experience a kind of like grief or homesickness. It's okay to change. It's okay for it to not feel sort of ideal right up front. I think just being curious, being kind to yourself, and also asking for support, whether you're a parent or a student, figuring out those sort of support systems for yourself so that transition, um, feels, I don't even want to say good. That's not even the appropriate thing to even like look for with transition, but how to make it feel the most like sustainable and grounded, because it's going to feel different either way. So figuring out those things that maybe create some structure and grounding, whether you're a parent or a student, can be, yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Having discussions beforehand, having soft plans in place, but allowing for adaptability, talking about those boundaries beforehand, all of those things are really great. I do want to bring up some of our Q&As before our session is over. And one of them is interesting because it's something that we as a panel talked about prior. What is your opinion on parents tracking students via phone apps when they go away to college?
You're shaking your head, Jed. Go ahead.
Don't
Yeah,
like
go
it. Don't
ahead.
like it. That
Yeah, we're in agreement.
yeah, middle school, absolutely. When they're 18, they're in college. No way. That's to me, that's so disrespectful. And you gotta eventually you gotta cut the cord and let them be, this is, their experience, their college experience, they're gonna make mistakes. And and you can't track all of it. And that to me feels more like surveillance once they're adults. And that, that could affect their sense of self and competency and their self-concept. My parents are still overseeing and observing and surveilling my online behaviors. Like, no. That's if when your kids are in crisis, there are times to step involved and intervene, but not when they're off and they're running. It tells them, I don't trust you. In a very, it's different when they're 13, when that oversight is essential, but not when they're 18, in my book.
Just to build on what Jed was saying, is that the simple fact is that they can leave their phone in their dorm room. They'll leave it in the library. They're smart. They'll find a way to work around those tools. And so then you have a young person without the phone going out at night or doing whatever they're doing. And that has always felt to me more dangerous than if we had a trusting relationship in which they could do what they want. So I just want to put that out there, that they can leave the phone wherever they want to be left. So it looks like they're in that place. Yeah.
Yeah, they're smart.
They're smart. Yeah.
And I had another question. I'm going to make it a little bit less specific. But what happens when a student can't adjust. It's not a good fit.
Mhm.
How should parents approach that? How should they support the student? What are the steps in addressing the issue with the school? It seems the question is asking about not liking left orientation, totally disillusioned, not liking the schedule, the roommate, the social scene, the overall fit. So it's not like something
Mhm.
bad happened or academic or anything like that. But I guess we could kind of think of it more broadly, is where I was kind of going with that. Is the student is not feeling the fit with the college this first semester or even the first year.
I'll share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The first or two things come to mind. First, the kind of sitting with your child to ask, well, like sort of the initial draw to the school in the first place, just to
Mhm.
kind of start there. And second would be actually kind of getting really nuanced and specific about what things are not feeling right. And if those are things that take some like a little bit of effort, naturally have some sort of adjustment, something that could in essence change over time. It doesn't necessarily give a concrete answer, but it's a way for a student to sort of process what may just be part of an adjustment, what may just be new. And also things are totally valid concerns for students to not want to stay out of school. So if it's like, oh, I don't feel like I'm driving with the people in my dorm. It's like, okay, well, is that something that um, could be changed? Are there people in other communities that you think that you would want to get involved in? And just start there. I think if a student has given some bit of time to finding community, taken some steps, and they're still feeling that way, then it's a different conversation.
I absolutely agree. I think kind of like taking it one step at a time, seeing if there is a solution, working through different solutions, and then, you know, it if it's the worst, the worst case scenario is not transfers are totally normal and available options. And a lot more students have been doing them in my work more recently. So that is, you do want to give your student the tools to work through what might just be uncomfortable or growing changes, though. Okay. Well, I think those are all of our questions. I'll give our attendees another second if you would like to ask any other questions. But I will also share our screen that has a QR code. And you can scan it and ask us any questions that you might have. We've really, really enjoyed having this conversation today. I'm so thankful to our incredible panel for joining us. And if you have any questions at all, our GuideWell large team is here for you, and both ESM and Applerouth and our other partner companies have great services for you. So if your student needs tutoring or academic mentorship or college level support, we offer all of them. So if you have more questions about those services, go ahead and scan our code or reach out to us via email. But thank you again to our amazing panel. And I don't see any other questions, but if you have some, again, feel free to reach out to us. So thank you so much, and everyone have a really great night.
Thank you.
Thank you.